This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining again. So despite of the competition with Esri today, still got a good attendance. It's great to see some key people are on an Esri call at this point in time. So we've got some key people that are not available today, but that will be fine. So for today, the agenda is that we're going to start with an update from Don, and then we're going to move on to Alan Chang from the server group. He'll be presenting the enterprise service. We'll be covering a quick update from Microsoft regarding the server lift project, a material compatibility update by Eduardo, and immersion requirements update by myself. And after that, I would like to spend some time here in this call to address a non-commercial OCP pitch deck for immersion cooling. But let's get started with Don. But before we get to Don, are there any questions regarding the agenda or any suggestions? Nope. Okay, Don, do you want to share the screen, or are you going to be doing this?
How about a quick share of the screen, if you could? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll make you a presenter. And you've got the hamburger.
Okay, hold on a second here. So real quick, we're broadcasting live from San Antonio, Texas, where the 7x24 show is in progress. Down the hall from me is Jack Kolar. Say hi, Jack. And what you're seeing right now, last night we had a dinner. Archana is also here with us. She's going around trying to promote. We had a dinner talking about what the Advanced Cooling Facilities group is doing. And just real quick, try to make this into a 10-minute highlight. Our general theme is we're going to be doing a panel discussion this afternoon on, don't fear liquid cooling, plan for it, or plan for IT is maybe another way to put it. What I'm most interested in communicating to the Immersion group is you probably should be aware of what we've been doing. These work streams I am pushing to try to publish by the end of summer. And that means by the end of August, if possible, because we'd like to be presenting on them, and I've never in November. What we need from the Immersion group as much as possible, and we're still trying to help define this. We've been asked to do as many reference designs as we can using as much real content as possible. So if you have and one thing I'd like to highlight here, I think we've discussed this briefly. There's more definition I can provide on what BIM content should be. And I'm not going to deep dive into that on this call, but in essence, we're looking for a BIM content is like a 300 or 400K description of your product versus a 15 megabyte description of your product. And construction people, it needs to be accurate in width and dimensions. We need to know what your delta T, your flow, and your KW is. And that sort of information helps us to take your products and put them into reference designs and kind of show how they'd be deployed. A couple of areas have been discussion lately, pipe location preference. And primarily with the tank group, would you be looking at a pipe that goes overhead or a pipe that is integral to a row of immersion tanks? I'd be interested in that kind of input as we look at the concept of reference designs. I'm going to pause for a moment, well, actually, as we look at things.
Which I was going to say.
This is, Rolf, did you want to jump in on anything I've been talking about here so far?
No, I'm just scrambling to see if I need to mute somebody, but it seems that the person is already muted. Yeah, so okay. Just to repeat what you're asking, repeat a consolidated request, right, to all the immersion vendors out there to start thinking about creating or sharing existing BIM content with the ACF group, right?
Exactly. What we'd like to do is take your products and put them into reference designs so that Google can say, oh, here's a sample deployment of 20 or 30 Asparatus or Green Revolution cooling or anyone who wants to have their products referenced. How many of these reference designs, or how we do that going forward, we're trying to show that it can be very simple to go from concept to construction. And again, one thing to highlight, pretty much consistently, most data center owners, whether they are MTDC, say Equinix or Stack or any host. Last night we had Compass, and Nancy Novak was at our group, and she was very passionate about this topic. She really loved the concept of being able to have reference designs so that she can plan her future. I would love to make a library of reference designs showing maybe different products. In many cases, we look for similarity. One thing I would like to highlight is many immersion companies may be making products that are not targeted toward this type of deployment. You might have an immersion product that you plan to use in a edge application with one or two in a box, something like that. I don't care about that being OCP ready. I do care OCP facility ready. For the products to be OCP facility ready, we need to at least have BIM content, and we're working with a better description of what that means for you. I can send that in a separate call, and I'll send that out to the team later on. And Rolf probably that was one thing that came out of our discussion last night, is we need to enhance our definition of this. I will also tell you that right now I think Schneider, for example, has all their new products are coming out with a BIM LOD 350, and Vertiv is moving in that direction. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do. And I also appreciate that many product developers don't think in terms of BIM, but if we're looking to try to sell 100 or 1,000 of your products to a company, they're going to really, you don't want to have your engineer remodel your product for you. You want to make it so that it's very seamless. Any questions on that?
Yes, Don, I have one. Hi, this is Raul Batshammer. So do you see valuable to organize maybe in your, let's say, in your calls, let's say a monographic, or let's say a session to dive into detail on how to implement BIM, or what are the requirements? Because actually this is very interesting for us, at least, to make it right. Because we started working with a company to let's say to be able to deliver at least by the end of the I would say next month, to have everything ready. And it will be really valuable for us, and I guess that for the rest of the community, to have a clear path, or let's say a clear definition of how we need to implement this. So if you consider this to be valuable, it will be really nice to organize a session to have a bit of a discussion about this.
We will go into another session, and maybe the next time, the next call for liquids, or I'll present to you on this topic versus having you all attend the ACF call or something like that. But a summary point here. One thing I am learning is I'm probably abusing the term BIM, because when I think of BIM, I think of construction type drawings and documentation. Other people might think of a 13 megabyte file that has every bell, whistle, color, dent, and bolt location on the product, so that you could actually do a 3D print of it. That is not the biggest problem with that. Is it needs to be dumbed down in order to be usable in a construction document. Adding 13 megabyte here, 13 megabyte there, you do it a couple hundred times, and you end up having a large file, and it just becomes unwieldy. So in essence, what most manufacturers do is they come up with the perfect virtual reality product that they can do, and people see that. In fact, when I jump to this here, here's an example of a virtual reality picture, or I think a modeled picture, I don't know. But the reality ends up being that while it looks good in advertising, it doesn't look good in construction drawings. So we need to help define that for you better. We thought we had, but the next thing we find is different regions has different understandings of what LOD is. So long story short, what you will need ultimately, most likely, is going to a local engineering firm and just saying, what would you, can you remodel this for us one time, okay? And when they remodel it for you, you want to get someone who's actually done construction grade BIM to do the modeling for you. They will know what to do. And then with that, it'll be a one-time fee. Whereas if you don't do that, every time you sell your product or try to sell your product, the engineer who's trying to plan around your product will have to pay that fee. And so there's no point in the goal of OCP is going to be have all vendors absorb that one-time fee themselves so that the rest of the world doesn't have to. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, actually, we have a pretty, let's say, clear vision on what BIM means to the community and the end customers and, let's say, the partners and the engineering partners. For us, it's more like having a clear vision of what the metadata is about, and the, let's say, and the integration with existing designs or new designs.
So this is the definition we have so far. Okay. And this is, but what we were told last night that while most in our group prefer Revit, there were some people who said, well, isn't it possible there's some other platform out there that's better than Revit? And the short answer is there is. So we need to put Revit or we need to change this to make it a little more open. But this is a summary of what I'd send you today. After last night's dinner, I was going to have John Gross take a look at it again and tighten it up a little for you. But this is a starting point. Does that make? And I just mailed this to John Bean. I should have mailed it to Rolf as well. Does that make sense?
I'd like to wrap this up, guys.
No, I don't want to spend more time on that yet. I don't want to spend more time. Yeah, it's pretty clear to me. Thank you.
Okay, that's pretty much all I had on this call. So go ahead. Any other questions?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Don. I think we're gonna close it up here now, but I appreciate your time. And if you can do understand correctly that you want to pick this up in the next call or one of the upcoming calls to get through a specification session for the BIM. Is that what you suggest?
I want to keep driving this forward. I will.
Yeah.
I definitely want to drive it forward, and we'll work offline as to whether or not we do it in one of my calls or one of your calls. Okay.
That's perfect.
That makes sense.
All right, will do.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and have a lot of fun on the event. And say hi to Ashna from all of us.
I will do that. Thanks. Bye.
All right, cool. All right, cool. We're moving on. So that was Don Mitchell. In case you've got any further questions, feel free to attend this call. His calls are always coming the hour after the Immersion call, and his contact details are on the screen right now. Going on, Alan Chang. Alan, are you in the call? Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm
Alan,
here.
you are? All right,
Yeah.
cool. I'm making you the presenter right now. So we're looking at Alan Chang. He's part of the server group and is responsible for the enterprise server project. So Alan, feel free to kick it off and educate us all.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen? I'm having all the trouble with the Go Meeting app.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
You know what? Give me 1 second. Let's see if it's working. Okay. If it's not, I attach a link, a box link that you guys can download a slide in the chat. Can you guys see that?
Okay, since this is recorded, would you like me to use that and present on your behalf?
Yeah, if you can do that, that would be great. And I'll verbally talk about it while you download the file. How's that? All
right. Yeah, just so if you got some generic introduction to go through, feel free to start, and I'll put it on screen as soon as I can.
Okay, thank you. So hey everyone, I was invited by John, right, to kind of talk about this topic in this particular meeting, right? So one of the things is last year in 2020, right, in the OCP Tech Week, we have a couple of the companies, like literally 4 companies, Inspur, HPE, Supermicro, and Flextronics, right? We have this idea about contributing a particular spec based on a 19-inch form factor chassis. So yeah, Rolf, if you can go to the first page, yeah. So basically the idea is we understand OCP has all this great innovation, right? The open rack, the Project Olympus as a starter, and then of course we have all these sub projects like doing a lot of different things. But as far as for the complete system infrastructure goes, right? OpenRack and Project Olympus pretty much dominate the entire conversation as far as it goes. So the problem is a lot of, as more enterprise customer was invited and joining the community, what they find out is they love the entire concept of going all these different subgroups and all these good ideas. But what happened is there's nothing too much they can consume right away from the get-go. Okay, because either most of the stuff was designed for Facebook, designed for Microsoft, or things like that. And then they do have a little bit challenging of changing their entire infrastructure simply because they like the idea about OpenRack. It does require a lot of heavy lifting, right, in their internal infrastructure. So with that being said, we do believe there should be an enterprise 19-inch product like the standard pizza boxes that should have a lot of more the OCP, what we call the OCP elements inside of it, right? And why reinvent into the wheel, right? If you can actually take all this element and put it into the 19-inch and make it still pretty innovation, right? So with that simple idea, we spent some time in the past couple months, right, to try to come up with a common spec. So every enterprise customer can come in and say, oh, if this particular product is it's based on the GP Enterprise Server 2021, I should be expecting some sort of baseline and then a very common design philosophy, right? Building behind it. And then I think that's the kind of the general sense of this the idea about all this. Okay. And Rolf, if you can directly go to page 6, that would be great. And I just want to kind of talk about what we have come up with a solution. Yeah.
This one?
So with that, I mean, we spent the last couple months, right? Because you can imagine like Inspur, HPE, Supermicro, and Flextronics, we all design our product is a little bit different, right? In order for us to come up with a common design baseline today, is we really called out some of the high level must-have, right? For instance, right, it's gonna be a 19-inch rack compatibility. And then in terms of the process, we want to make sure it support everything up to 165 watts as a minimum, right? In terms of the memory, we call out some specs and then storage requirement and so forth. But I think this is what we come into the sense and saying, hey, because we started this conversation a little bit late, all the new design for instance, the Ice Lake or anything like that for 2021 has been already kicked off, and we wouldn't able to actually change the corporate, right? Like to change the design like very widely to meet some sort of spec that we didn't thought about before. So what we come up with is in 2021, we want to call out all this spec as a general sense, but in the future, we want to including some more mature OCP element as the 2022 refresh, the 2023 refresh. So Ralph, if you can go to the next page real quick. Thank you. So this is some of the future requirement that it's in the pipeline when we were discussing about and finalizing this as we speak last week. So there's something like the E1.S, right? We have seen a lot of maturity happening in the E1.S market as one of the storage option that people want to adapt. So we do have that as one of the future requirements that we want to refresh in the 2022 and checking it. And of course, manageability. And OCP has this DCSCM around BMC conversation going on. We haven't figured out which one is going to be dominating the conversation in 2022. So we put that as one of the tracker, continue to follow through, and we want to include that in the 2022 conversation. And then security features, of course, right? There's all these things. So the main purpose and the main reason I come into this meeting is I want to understand from the immersive cooling, projects, right? Is there gonna be something like, what do you guys think about the timeline? and like you guys gonna have a very mature specs and specification for us to follow, and then we can also put that into one of the future requirement as part of the tracker, right? We want to make sure not just Inspur, HP, Flextronics, and Supermicro, but there's gonna be more OEMs out there, right? Gonna design based on this particular spec, and then they will be, I don't want to say forced, right? But in some way they will have a baseline, and then they can actually follow through with this, and then so forth. I mean, that will help also increase the adoption of immersive cooling down the road. So that's kind of the high level spec that or idea that we have so far. And we're talking to ACS, right? Like Coldplay and things like that. But of course, right, immersive cooling is something kind of missed out on our radar earlier, but we want to actually bring this opportunity to see if there's something we can do together. So let me pause right here. This is pretty much everything I kind of want to talk about, and I want to get some comments and feedback from you guys.
Thanks for that. So I think that this is the right place to have that conversation. So this is I'm giving the stage to the community here. If you guys have got any feedback, comments to Alan regarding the enterprise server, yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Alan, nice to meet you. First of all, did you have a thought, because the thing that I'm not seeing here? Did you have a thought of the, let's say, physical design or mechanical design? Because one of the things that we are seeing in immersion cooling is that most of the time, the most convenient, just an example, the most convenient place to put the connectors are on the top of the tank. Did you have a thought on that, or is this open to discussion on this, let's say, set of requirements?
Okay, to answer your question, we thought about that, right, at a moment, and for this particular 2021 spec, we still call out the PCI slots and things like that in the rear side of the chassis. For the reason is this is really targeted for enterprise customer, right, who's having infrastructure for decades already. But we did talk about moving the IOs to the front. It has been a trend, right, in a hyperscaler, and then we do see a lot of adoption in the what we call the second wave of the cloud service provider, right? It's like someone who is doing a little bit of customization here and there, but wasn't like the scale of Facebook and Microsoft. So we would kind of talk about that, but we haven't decided, make a concrete decision saying, hey, that's going to be something we want to force our community going to, but that will be definitely something we can talk about down the road for 2022, right? Because for Inspur, I can speak for Inspur. Inspur is trying to bring that everything was front IO, right? The IO drives and the PCI slots in the front, and that's also one of the reasons why we have the E1.S conversation, right? Because when you have PCI cards and then 2.5-inch like storage, try to compete for the same space, right? Same front IO space, and then we need to do something with a smaller in terms of dimension and sizes in terms of the storage. That's why E1.S is one of the conversation. And then I'm thinking if we want to have that conversation, right, we should include that in the E1.S conversation, and then see if we can call it out, and then everything was front IO down the road. Yeah.
Alan, with respect to this suggestion, there is a white paper that was published end of last year. Okay. It's called Design Guidelines for Optimized IT for Immersion Optimized IT Equipment. It contains a whole bunch of elements to take into account when designing for immersion optimization for immersion, including some of the additional potential for a system to operate at a higher at higher levels, at higher loads, but also in higher thermal environments, warmer thermal environments, which will also benefit the reliability of systems. So I think on behalf and in collaboration with the community, I think we would. I think it would be good to see if we can synchronize on those kind of measures.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, like that. Is it on the wiki side for the OCP? And then we can.
Yes.
Okay.
It is. Okay. It is published on the Immersion wiki, and it also refers to an open cassette, which is a universal chassis which can be used for immersion as a starting point. Doesn't mean that it's a specification that doesn't need to be as it currently is. It's ready to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
But that's specifically aimed at allowing further optimization of computer systems like this.
Yep. Sounds good. Yeah,
I
like
put the
I
link
think
in the chat window as
Go
well.
ahead.
Alan,
Okay.
I put the link in the chat window, so easy to get to the document if you're interested.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Yeah. Yeah, I think
Jessica.
Rob, the universal chassis conversation is really good because you know, when we initially start the entire GP, you know, enterprise conversation, right, general purpose enterprise conversation, we do want to call out the motherboard has to be some sort of form factor, right, fitting into a chassis that's commonly being used. But because we kind of kick off the conversation a little bit too late, right? So no one can come to a conclusion saying, hey, this is gonna be the motherboard form factor that we're gonna design. But we were already talking about that down the road and then see how that might fit, right? So maybe, yeah, I'll check it out and then see if we can actually start that conversation a little bit in a GP enterprise workstream. Thank you.
Is there anybody else with questions or comments before we move on to the next presentation?
From a form factor, is there any plans on streamlining and making the server even thinner than it currently is, less than 1U?
Are you suggesting some sort of multi-node design, like 1U, 2-node, or you're talking about half U, like?
Such as a half a U, or
Okay.
or a server that has two boards that are stacked on top of each other in 1U.
Okay. To be frank, it was not talked about at the moment because this is more conventional, you know, as we can imagine. But I think down the road, as we speak about, you know, like try to standardize the motherboard form factor and sizes, and we can probably have that as one of the conversations down the road for sure. Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Alan, I'd like to, on behalf of the whole community here, I'd like to thank you very much for this, for spending the time with us and giving us the insights that you and the updates on what you guys are doing. I think it's exciting work to see SOP active in the enterprise domain, and I do believe that this is probably one of the projects that would go really well hand in hand with Immersion as well. So. If you don't mind, I'll be reaching out to you to see how we can further collaborate more intensively. I think that will be very beneficial.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Yeah.
All right. For now, thank you very much, and I'd like to continue on to the next one. Fred, is Fred on the line? I don't see him. Is somebody asking? Is somebody still asking a question? Apparently that was an open mic. Okay, I don't see Fred on the call. Is there anybody else from Microsoft to cover Fred? Clearly not. In that case, we'll move on to the next one. That is Eduardo. Eduardo, I see that you are on the call, so you cannot hide.
Hi, Rob. Can you hear me? Good morning.
Yes,
good afternoon.
I can.
Yeah. Good.
I have just made you a presenter.
Good. So let me share my screen and then take the chance to give a brief update on the material compatibility workstream.
So we're seeing your actual PowerPoint application, not the presentation. Sorry, there we go.
Here we go. Yeah, can you see now? Good.
Yes.
All right. So thank you, Rolf, and thank you all for the community for the opportunity to present today and give a brief update what's going on the separated compatibility focus group workstream. So it's been this focus group meets every second and fourth Tuesday as well. So we we aim to increase the frequency to get more momentum and to, let's say, to start to get the contribution or to get the paper progressing, let's say, a little bit quicker. So now what we're currently focused, the main activities are the compatibility matrix. What that means that we really now have we started to have contributions from let's say from the team members, from the people join the calls. That means that we are now sharing. We are kind of starting to have a shape of a matrix where we have the fluids, different type of fluids in the columns, and also different type of materials in the lines. Also, we are spending some time to try to associate with the application as well. And we are filling this data as let's say in the current calls at the moment. And I have a snapshot in this next slide that will give you an overview about this. But as you can imagine, each I would say member or each supplier has kind of done their own test, or they have their own data, and by consolidating this requires some time and effort, right? So now we kind of decide in the work streams, okay, we spent some months now, trying to on the definitions, to think about how we would make this. And now we kind of have at the moment more than, let's say, 90 materials in the list, and there are some blanks that has to be filled. That means that for each fluid we don't have necessarily all the let's say the tests completed, but in the last call we got a commitment from the team members that we're measuring the percentage of these columns, and we'll be working at our own organizations to have this, let's say, completed as much as we can. And yeah, and I think this is one of the main focus or our main works. It's quite a lot of work here in this focus group. So this would be like a separated matrix or a separated Excel file, which is going to be available as well, additionally to the Word file that will kind of compiling all the like a white paper, right, with all the definitions and standards information. And so this is what's going on the compatibility matrix. And on the also currently focus we are working on is the test standards recommendation for the fluids, also for the different type of fluids, and also for the materials. Here also it's been a lot of let's say time spending trying to streamline yeah, as you can imagine, the different type of chemistries and fluids, and also different type of materials, and also based on very few global standards at the moment that we could base on. So basically, there's two main topics I would like to share with you today, and this is just a reminder: the roasters and the main people kind of actively contributing for this. By providing information, by jointly not only these two calls every 2 weeks, but also we have separated calls trying to prepare the material to share with this in this biweekly call. So it's kind of a bunch going on, and a lot of work as well here. So, and if can I move to the next slide? And this is where I keep this again chart just to give an idea where we started trying to, we have done some work on the fluid classifications, and also we started here back to compiling the compatibility matrix. Now of course we are dragging now because we realized it's more effort that we believed before, that we thought before, and now we kind of hopefully or working to have this test methods let's say rounded up by the beginning of the Q3. But we do believe that the main or the sticky point would be the material screening consolidation. That means this matrix, right? Because we need to rely let's say on other colleagues eventually, and also laboratories manpower to complete, the tests that we'd like to, in order to finalize the metrics. So this is kind of where we are at the moment, but we're still foresee, let's say, we're hoping and working to have a very robust document, metrics and document that we can share by the end of the year, or by, at least by Q4, and we'll keep updating, the ACS community about the progress. And just to give you, I don't want to go in details here, but just a snapshot. It's very small on purpose because I try to put everything together, but you can see how this metrics, the matrix looks like at the moment, where we have here some of the applications. Where is this a seal or O-rings or rubbers or gaskets, we are putting here or trying to associate the compatible materials for each application or a group of application. And then you can see here that we have the contributions from synthetic esters with synthetic hydrocarbons, the GTL, and also synthetic hydrocarbons, and PFPE, the perfluorinated polyether, and the PFCs as well, the perfluorocarbons. And as I mentioned, so let's call, we realize we are having more than 90, let's say, materials already, and then but the aim is to have some these blanks, let's say, the material which were not tested, completed, and streamline the test progress, the test methods. So this is, I think, at the end, this will give a very good, let's say, overview or possibility, not only for the partner customers, but also for the OEMs and technology providers when putting the solution together, right? And then a second thought we had in some of other calls is where we're focused on specifically on the materials right here, but perhaps a second thought would be to include a separate column on the materials itself. But this is something that work group, for example, some tests done on let's say, components itself, like capacitors and memories, which information is available on the let's say, on the supplier side. So this is something we are working parallel as well, but this we are focused to have this completed first, and then to explore our way to let's say, to evolve from there. And let me see. Yeah, this is actually a brief update, Rolf and all. So any questions from the community? I think we have a few minutes still.
Yeah, so the floor is for the community.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if John is on the call. If John would like, to give, okay.
No, John is at the John is on the ASHRAE call.
All right. Okay. So in that case,
also representing our community, of course. And this looks like excellent work. A question from my end: has this been normalized? This table that we're looking at, or is there still some ambiguity between different? Because there's the limitations of acceptable, marginally acceptable, unacceptable. Are these quantified now and normalized across these different fluids, or
no,
is there still this? Yeah, go ahead.
No, Ralph, and it's still work in progress. This would be, the aim is also, what we decide, or what we thought, okay, let's fill in the table with information available, and then we kind of working like on the second stage on the normalization, and also like, as you mentioned, because some, some contributors or some, companies provide like acceptable or marginal acceptable, what that means. And then we start, okay, if it's not acceptable or marginal acceptable, let's put at least a remark to give some guidance what that means, right? But down the road, I think this is the next steps. Once we have the data, and I'll give you an example. Another thing that we are focused is not here, but we have just created some columns that we see that most of, these materials sometimes are duplicated. For example, you have multiple material, the same materials for multiple applications, and then we're trying to see if there's a logical way that we could put this together. For example, it would be also part of this normalization that you mentioned. Okay.
Good. Okay, that's brilliant stuff. It looks this looks very exciting. I just wanna mention towards the community that this is the type of material that has been previously kept under strict NDAs by various companies. So the fact that this is now assembled and presented in a public domain environment is something that is somewhat disruptive, right? So that's a significant step forward for the immersion community. Okay, thank you very much, Eduardo, for your time and for this great work. Looking forward to seeing more of that. So on to
You're welcome.
the next presentation. I need to share my screen first again. So any further questions, please address them to Eduardo or John. Email addresses are on screen. And the next one in line is me with the immersion requirements update. So I'm going to keep this very short because the last immersion requirements meeting, I was not present due to my own holiday. But what I can state is that some significant progress has been made by now. We've got one more session for this month scheduled for tomorrow, and I do believe that we'll be able to generate an initial draft to share with the community for the next month's call. So we are on schedule. There's a couple of complex topics that are being discussed still, but I have full confidence that we'll be able to resolve it with the community. So far, everything seems to be on track for an October incubation committee submission. More on the content of the revised immersion requirements next month. If there are any particular questions about this project, please feel free to ask them. Okay, so we'll move on to the topic of the month, which this time is an immersion community and non-commercial pitch deck. There have been numerous occasions where we as a community, or I as a community lead, or some other project leads within OCP have been trying to engage either with each other or with an industry, and we seem to be still running into the situation where people are asking a lot of questions about, well, immersion, so how does that actually work? And a good example was earlier today in the call as well, when it came to the enterprise server. Well, nobody's actually considered immersion so far. And that's not only on the technology side, that's also on the industry side. End users who are very interested in adopting immersion cooling, they are faced with some different angles, different stories, different pitches in the market. And one of the requests, so on a few occasions, with several people have been in a position where they were asked for a pitch deck regarding, or an overview of what immersion means in the context of open compute, what the pros and cons are and the efficiency advantages. So the consideration here is, hey, if you look at all the immersion vendors that are in the market today, there is a lot of harmony between specific pitches that are made when it comes to claims on efficiency, when it comes to claims on reliability, when it comes to claims on densities, and a lot of that can actually be harmonized across vendors. And the question is there interest? Is it even feasible and possible to create one generic immersion community pitch deck, which doesn't really look at specific solutions, but more on immersion in general? But more at immersion in general and the pros and cons of that, that can act as a generic industry pitch deck for the immersion technology. I'd like to request some thoughts and insights from this community on this topic, and specifically how we could bring that to an actual result. Is there anybody who would like to share a view on this? And I know there's a couple of you out there who are usually quite eager to speak up.
Rolf, just to maybe a little clarification of what you're thinking behind this one of saying, you know, because part of, if we're saying the requirements document, and a lot of it is going out with information of educating people, right, about
Yes.
immersion that are not, that, yeah, doesn't know much about immersion. How would this be different? What do you consider should be part of a pitch deck, and is, you know, in that is different from what is currently in the educational material?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we're looking at here is overall features. So why is immersion even a thing? So all the documentation, all the projects are fairly technical in nature currently, and they're looking at technical qualifiers and disqualifiers and a lot of instructions and know-how to a great technical detail. What we'd be looking for here is a more generic approach. Okay, so why is immersion even a thing? Right? What is the primary aim of immersion? What can be achieved with immersion in terms of efficiency? So like a commercial pitch deck for that initial conversation, just to get that ball rolling in the direction of immersion, because a lot of people don't even know yet why immersion should be a consideration. So think of it as a marketing pitch without pitching for a specific individual company, but for a community of companies.
Rolf, can I add some?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So I have experience with different kind of cooling, starting from air on chip and immersion. And if we talk about general immersion cooling, there is main advantages for sustainability of data centers. And only immersion cooling give you possibility to take out the fans of the servers and reduce IT load, which create the conditions to decrease the input energy less than with conventional servers. This is the first thing, general. Another point is that when you heat up the liquid, it means that you can use it to transfer the heat from the servers to the heating. And this is the second important thing. And these two together create the conditions to reduce CO2 emissions, to create negative data center, carbon footprint negative for data centers. And I think this is the driver of immersion cooling, to implementation immersion cooling for data centers.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, right? So that's definitely part of such a pitch deck. And
of course, the rest thing, which is not mentioned, but we don't need freons for chillers because we cool down without any mechanical cooling. It's also makes sense from this point of view of reducing GHG emissions, and the producing of itself the chillers and different cooling equipments is itself it's also makes sense. So it's less equipment and less footprint for data center, less construction materials, and this is how we can create sustainable data centers. And it's regarding general immersion cooling.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like you're happy to volunteer to take part in a generic immersion community pitch deck. Is that do
yes.
I take that correctly?
Yes, actually, I'm already do this, and you can see some videos and presentations about that on LinkedIn. So it's general about immersion cooling.
So I want to suggest something, because I understand that at least some of the, let's say, participants here on the community, they have if they have, let's say a more commercial pitch deck, I believe that one of the parts of this pitch deck should be this non-commercial one. So the thing that I suggest here, Rolf, and I'm not sure if you agree or not, is that we can move this over, let's say, a focus group to gather the feedback of the community, of all of the community. I'm happy to volunteer leading this, if you agree, because we have lots of materials that are actually non-commercial or can be easily adapted to the non-commercial pitch deck. And it would be really nice to have, let's say, the whole feedback of the community to drive this. So we can all compare on how we do this actually with our customers and try to adapt and, let's say, distill something like that.
Great, thank you very much for that. Anyone else with insights on maybe whether you're interested in whether you see a value of such such an OCP style pitch deck for immersion?
Yeah, I'm kind of representing the storage group here. I'd like to make sure that we get some content in here that discusses a little bit about how storage fits into immersion, because I think a lot of the discussion, 95% of the discussions are around compute, but I think the storage community would be very interested in what the point of view is about how storage fits into immersion and what the requirements are. If it's going to be a 50C environment in general, that's very much of interest to the device community. And I think there's probably a general lack of knowledge that things like helium HDDs are very well designed for immersion.
All right. I think that is a valuable input, Matt. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Is that actually that brings me to Matt? Would you be interested in presenting some insights on what you're doing with the storage community?
Yeah, I think that'd be, yeah, we could do that for sure.
Right. Shall we? Would you mind sending me an email with your contact details so we can pick that up after the outside the community call, please?
Yes.
I'd appreciate that. Great stuff. Got anyone else with insights for this? We've already have 2 volunteers jumping up to pick up and run with this. Is there anyone else who wants to share views, opinions, or even volunteer? Okay, so let's roll. I'll reach out to you separately. Let's see how we can progress this.
Okay, thank you, Rolf.
No worries. I'm gonna close the call now. We're gonna wrap it up. It's at the end of the hour. Gonna stop the recording. I'll hang in here for a little bit longer just to make sure that if anyone else has got more questions, we can answer those. But for now, I want to thank everybody for participating today, and I hope to see and hear you all again in the next call next month. Keep an eye on your agendas. There will be more new invitations coming your way for these sessions, and looking forward to the next one. Thank you all for participating.
This conference will now be recorded.
Oops.